MornY'all. Two laws drafted in the same year by the same sponsor for the same stated purpose reveal how far a country will go when fear reshapes policy. One act never became law, the other transformed daily life. Together, they map the boundary between legitimate security and government overreach. The Border Protection, Anti-Terrorism, and Illegal Immigration Control Act of 2005 proposed a 700-mile fence. Felony penalties and unlawful presence, mandatory detention, harsh employee sanctions, and federal custody for every undocumented person. It converted the civil violation into an aggravated felony, and by doing so would have authorized deadly force against people whose only offense was unlawful entry. Took no account for asylum, economic dependence, and migrants or humanitarian costs. It offered sweeping power without meaningful insight. The public rejected it. The Real ID Act of 2005 was narrower but more enduring. It established a national identification system through state driver's license. What began as a tool to verify identity after hijackers exploited lax documentation became a gateway requiring for flying, entering federal buildings, and accessing services. It hardened asylum standards, limited appeals, expanded deportation authority, and gave DHS the unprecedented power to waive environmental protection, NEPA. An Endangered Species Act and others when building border barriers. The waiver authority has already reshaped ecosystems, divided family land, intensified flooding, and pushed migration into deadly terrain. The law's reach fell hardest on the vulnerable. Women fleeing genital mutilation and forced marriage faced credibility tests shaped by male expectations. Sexual minorities were asked to prove their identity through witness still trapped in hostile countries. Transgender applicants confronted legal mismatches and scrutiny that turned demeanor, subjectivity, cultural biases, impressions into grounds for denial. All of this played out in court stripped of discretion, with appeals delayed while people remain in detention. Behind both acts lies a broader pattern. Anti-terrorism laws framed as neutral disproportionately affected Mexican immigrants, asylum seekers, and poor and minorities. Environmental damage was dismissed as collateral. Indefinite detention grew under the logic of exception, and the United States moved closer to a national tracking system combining biometrics, digital records, and identity checkpoints at ordinary moments of life. Yet the policy debate rarely asks the essential questions. Does identification stop terrorism or just catalog the law-abiding? Does border fortification deter threats or shift crossing into lethal corridors? Does rapid legislation after catastrophic protect the country or bypass democratic judgment? And how long should emergency laws endure once the emergency is passed? The contrast between the two acts illustrates the public threshold. One was too sweeping, too punitive, and too transparently racialized to survive. The other succeeded because its burden seemed smaller. Its purpose clear and its mechanisms incremental. But over time, its slow expansion has carried consequences just as deep. Curtailed civil liberties, hardened borders, increased detention, and national ID system whose future scopes remains uncertain. Security demands vigilance, but democracies must scrutinize the tools they adopt in fear, because those tools tend to outlive the crisis that created them. Both acts show how easily counterterrorism can morph into exclusion, surveillance, and inequality unless the public insists on limits. Wasabi.